Hello and welcome to the Premier Football Podcast. I'm Rafe Garland, back hosting the show this week in the absence of Sean Windsor. Unfortunately, he's far too busy to be here slumming it with us, but I've got three fantastic guests this week. Just like a Luis Suarez fan in 2013, Conor Jennings just can't get enough. You're back, Conor?
Oh.
Conor, this is the part where you say hello to everyone watching at home.
Hello, everyone. Might be my last one after that comment.
We're joined for the first time on the show by Stefan Gallagher.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Live from Green Street.
Possibly won't be allowed back on the show wearing the jersey. And as always, joined by the stalwart, Joseph Doherty. How are you getting on, Joe?
I'm well, Rafe. I'm hoping we have a more amicable conversation than the one we've been having all day via WhatsApp about history and politics.
Yeah. Well, I suppose nothing brings people together like football. There's nothing divisive in the world of football, is there?
Absolutely not. No. Yeah, we can all agree on that.
That's it. Well, look, guys, this week we are going to look more towards the return of the actual football. We're not talking about too much of what's going on in the world in terms of politics. We've had enough of that for today. We are going to focus on the Premier League because it does look like it's coming back. And what we intend to do is go through the teams kind of one by one, look at how the squads are shaping up coming into the end of the season, and maybe giving a few predictions as to how we think the league might finish out whenever that finish point is. We're going to start at the bottom of the table and work our way up. And of course, bottom of the table sit the Canaries, Norwich City, a team that have been touted all season as certainties for relegation by Sean Windsor, who's obviously not here today. Joe, we'll start with you. Do you give Norwich any chance of staying up?
I mean, they have a chance. Every club down there has a chance. They have the least amount of chance because they're 6 points adrift. And they have the worst goal difference in the league. They've conceded 52 and they have a goal difference of minus 27. I think with any team down the bottom who's looking to stay up, you need goals. And I suppose Timo Pukki got a few at the start of the season. I would never in a million years have categorized him as a Premier League level striker. He's at best championship striker / SPL. I just don't see how they're going to get the goals to stay up. I mean, Todd Cantwell is decent, but he's an attacking midfielder, kind of might get a couple in the run-in, but he's not going to score a goal every other game, is he? Let's be real. And Pukki's not going to score a goal a game or a goal every other game. I think they'll struggle to score goals. I think they have a weak defence. I think that they're better suited to playing in the Championship, even though it's a very tough league. I just don't think they're quite cut out for the Premier League. And I don't think they'll be too displeased to be back in the Championship next season. I think they'll keep hold of Daniel Farke if they can, because I think despite their failure in the Premier League this season, he's not a bad manager. And I don't think that Norwich, I don't hear any discontent. Not that I hear a lot from Norwich fans, because there don't seem to be too many on the World of Football Twitter, but I don't think there's been too much discontent or calls for his head from either Norwich fans or the media. So yeah, I'd be tipping them to go down, man. They've won 5 games. They've got a wretched defensive record and they don't score enough goals.
Would either Stefan or Conor like to argue with anything Joe said there?
No, I personally find it pretty hard to argue with any of that. I think at the start of the season when Pukki was bagging a few goals, you kind of looked at that. I remember watching their first game of the season when Liverpool were just walking through them, thinking, wow, they're really going to struggle this season. But then as Pukki scored, you might think, well, if they can rely on this guy to score all season, they're definitely going to have a chance for sure. But I think they've got maybe 1 goal in their last 5 games. That's their current form, so there's nowhere near going to be enough to keep them up. So it's hard to argue with that. Hard to really see, kind of just like echoing what Joe said, where any of the goals are going to come from.
They did have a lot of injuries in the early part of the season. I think they were without 7 or 8 of their first team players at one stage. Could this break be a chance, Conor, maybe for them to get some of the players back into the squad, to turn around the fortunes? Maybe a couple of the other teams around them might be out of practice as well. Like, have stranger things have happened than teams clawing back? What's the points difference that they have? Is it only 6 at the bottom?
6 points.
It's only 6 points at the end of the day. Conor, do you give them any chance?
To be honest, I have to echo the sentiments of Joe and Stefan there. I mean, as you rightly point out, it is only 6 points. And I think people kind of forget that. So a couple of wins and results going their way and all of a sudden they're back in it. And as you said, stranger things have happened. However, I mean, you look at Norwich's kind of how they want to approach games, how Daniel Farke wants to approach the team playing, and they're a very attacking team. However, they've only scored, I think it's about 25 goals this season, and they've leaked goals for fun. So I think regardless of player availability, I think they've proven they just don't quite have that quality to stay up. However, it is admirable how Farke, stuck to his principles and how he wants them to play, but it's just not, they don't have enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think sorry, Rafe, just to cut on one last point, kind of looking, I think a lot of the Norwich fans that I've seen and read it from, they kind of have a lot of perspective on where the club is, where it's got to probably in the last 10, 15 years. And kind of like we said, if they can hang on to Farke, they probably will, and try and actually build some sort of philosophy on how to play at the club and build it down throughout the club. And, another year or two in the Championship, given what's come, in the kind of longer history before, they definitely wouldn't be complaining too much.
Yeah, I agree with that, Stefan, definitely. And I think, they're likely to go down. However, I think everybody can only have respect for them. A newly promoted team going away to Anfield on the first day of the season and trying to outplay Liverpool. I mean, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to do that. So I think fair play to Norwich for giving it a go, but they might just not have enough quality this time around.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So we talk about Norwich possibly being more suited to the Championship for now. A team that is very much an established Premier League team, currently sitting 19th in the league, Aston Villa. They do, of course, have a game in hand. Joe, do you give them a chance? Actually, maybe we'll start with Stefan this time. We'll let him have a go. We'll bring you in.
Yeah. I mean, Villa, once I think you go past Norwich, it's all up for grabs from there on. They're going to have probably a heavy reliance on Grealish for sure. He's their star. He's their bell cow. There's a big talk of that. This is probably going to be his last run at the club. That in the summer he's going to go to one of the top clubs. So, someone like him is going to be desperate. He's been at that club for years now. He's going to be desperate to not leave the club in the Championship. So, he's going to be playing on fire, you'd imagine. And, he's the kind of talisman where you talk about, we talked about will Norwich be able to get on enough of a run that, he can fire them, he can win them games. You look at that game, I know it's in the Championship against Birmingham, where he gets punched in the head and then scores a brilliant solo goal to win the game. He's the kind of player that can really inspire a team on. So, I think with him, they'll always have a chance. So, I definitely wouldn't discount Villa. I don't know if some of his extracurricular activities might cause him a bit of trouble on the run, but if he can keep himself straight, he should be able to give him a good shot.
Conor, do you think that they're too dependent on Jack Grealish? Are they one injury away from going down?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, he's sort of the focal point of their creativity and attacking quality. I absolutely, I think they rely very heavily on him. However, I think the bottom line is that they've proven they've conceded 56 goals out of 28 games, which is an absolutely shambolic record. So I think regardless of their attacking quality or lack of it, they've shown that they just leak too many goals. And it's something that you'd think maybe with John Terry as assistant manager, he'd be able to maybe work with the back four a bit more, but they've just got a bit of inexperience, don't they? And not enough quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, they sit second bottom in the table, obviously with a game in hand, and a lot of Villa fans were very kind of against the idea of the league table being taken as it is, because it obviously would mean that they go down, whereas a 3-pointer would put them out of it. But they do have the second worst goal difference in the division. They have negative 22 goal difference after 19 games. Is that good enough for a team that want to stay in the Premier League?
Definitely not. And like Conor said, they've conceded the most goals in the league. They've even conceded more than Norwich. I would take issue with them being called an established Premier League club because it's their first season back in the Premier League. I know that they have a long history of being in the Premier League up until the mid-2010s, but they've been in the Championship for 2 or 3 seasons before this. So they're very much in a rebuilding phase. They've spent tons of money. I think they spent over £100 million, £120 million, something like that.
This is a club that's won the European Cup before.
I know. Yeah, of course they have. I think they've won a couple, haven't they? No, sorry, Forest have won a couple. Villa have won one.
Yeah.
I know they have a wealthy owner, but I'm still not 100% sure if they can afford to go down. I think that they're in trouble. They have to play in their remaining 10 games. Wolves, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal. Those are tough fixtures. I don't think that aside from Grealish, they have that much quality going forward. John McGinn is decent. There's another lad. There's an Irish player who they have whose name I can't remember.
Conor Horan.
Conor Horan, who's not bad, but they don't really have a recognised centre forward.
They do. Wesley, he's injured though.
He's out for the season.
Could he be back though? He was out for the season. I wonder when he's due back actually.
That's a good point. Another point about him. I didn't think he was that great. He didn't seem to be up to too much. Certainly from what I saw from the few games that he played, I think he scored just 1 or 2 goals at the most. So they're a team that I would worry about. I think that they have tough fixtures. They leak goals. They score maybe more than the other teams down there. Maybe not. No, sorry, not even. I'm looking at the table now, and they score more than Watford, Bournemouth, and Norwich, and that's it. And Brighton. So even West Ham score more goals than them. So they're in a very difficult situation, and they could easily find themselves in serious trouble.
I'd say one point on like some of those players we've gone through. You talk about the difference between Premiership and Championship quality. I think a reliance on players like Wesley to be your bellwether. Like we've said about Pukki, is looks good for one game, but the consistency really isn't there just to fire them to safety. So if Grealish is to go down, you really do look around the team like is Horan going to come in and fill that kind of a 1 in 4 or 5 kind of game where he really seems to step up. I think they're definitely got a big key man risk there.
I think that it does come back to Conor's point, really. Sorry, Conor, about defence for them. Villa do score goals. Conor Horan puts in an exceptional set piece. If you look at how teams have stayed up in the Premier League before, maybe it is reliant on keeping a clean sheet and nicking one towards the end, however it is, from a set piece on the break. And if Aston Villa can sort out themselves at the back, I would give them every chance of staying up. But based on what we've seen in the first 28 games of their season, they don't look like sorting out their defence. Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, Ray, for me, when I look at their back four, I mean, they've got players like, Tyrone Mings, has got a lot of potential.
He played for England this year, didn't he?
He did, yeah. But I don't think he has a good partner with him in the centre of the back four. And I think you're looking at players like sort of El Mohammadi, who's a decent going forward, quick, but again, suspect defending, 1v1 not good. And you've got Neil Taylor, who again is proven in the Championship, but has never really cut it in the Premier League. So they've just got a weak back four, and I think that's ultimately their undoing. And I'm surprised they didn't invest further in it, to be honest.
I think the Pepe Reina transfer, you would argue, really hasn't paid off too well either. And it seemed to have had the impact.
Wait till he saves a penalty on the last day of the season to keep them up.
Yeah. I think they have West Ham in the last game of the season, so that'll be it. But I think, there's been a few errors. And, I guess you really want organisation out of a goalkeeper like that with experience, so he hasn't really
absolutely. We will move on because we don't have 20 minutes for every club. Bournemouth sit 18th. We talk about established Premier League teams. They've been in the Premier League for 5 or 6 years now without ever really setting the place on fire. A lot of their big names didn't perform for the first part of the season up till now. Is now the time when some of their big stars can come in, Callum Wilson or Ryan Fraser or whoever it is that wants their big move, and put down a marker with the last 9 games of the season? Conor, what do you think?
I mean, you would hope so for Bournemouth's sake, wouldn't you?
If they want their move even as well for themselves.
Yeah, you would think that. Again, it just hasn't really. They haven't kicked on like a lot of people thought they would. I think they look this season. They've looked as poor as I've ever seen them under Eddie Howe. So it's not looking good. They just can't seem to get a run of good results together. But they've got some good quality in there. Although it's a shame to see the likes of Solanke never really paid off as a player. I think he hasn't scored this season, has he? He's played nearly like 24 games.
He's rubbish. I think he scored one that wasn't in the league, and maybe he got one in the league in the last couple of games. But I think he's got 2 goals for the season, and I think he scored 1 goal for Liverpool the season before.
Yeah. And then you're looking at Callum Wilson. I think is their top goal scorer. He's got less than 10 goals. So, I mean, if they're going to step up, it really needs to be quick, doesn't it? Because they're running out of games, and they've just showed a real lack of quality going forward. Again, Eddie Howe, credit to him for sticking to his attacking principles, but they don't have the players to back it up at the moment.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, Callum Wilson is going to be desperate, not even to get a move, but to be involved in the next European Championships, whenever it is, summer 2021. At the start of this season, I think he would have been considered England's third choice striker, and he seems to have fallen a long way from that pedestal. Do you see any hope for him?
Kind of on his next move and the like sort of Ryan Fraser's next move, with the extremely tight window that we're going to have between the end of this season and the start of the next season, I think that they're quite established players in the Premier League. People kind of know what they can do. Just to give you some context into Callum Wilson's bad season he's having this year, he's got 7 and 27 in the league. 2 years ago, he got 8 and 28. And the year before that, 6 and 20. It was only last season where he broke double figures in the Premier League, getting 14 and 30. So he's kind of a 1 in 3, 1 and 2.5, 1 in 3 striker.
I will say,
and so it's nothing out of the ordinary for him to dip below the
he has struggled with injuries in his career up to now, and a lot of those appearances in previous seasons would have been off the bench, him trying to get himself back, him trying to get himself fit. He does look like quite a good player when you watch him, especially when he's on form. But is it one of these players that just blows hot and cold? Is he not good enough? Is he not at that level?
I mean, he's not at an elite level. There's no doubt about that. He's a decent mid-table striker at best. Anyone whose highest goals tally in their Premier League career is 14 goals is not elite, cannot be considered an elite out-and-out striker. It's just not possible. On like the likes of him and Ryan Fraser, are they going to be motivated enough to? I mean, Ryan Fraser was linked with Arsenal last year. At worst, he's going to be linked with the likes of, I don't know, kind of mid-table clubs, Everton, Wolves, clubs like that. So I don't know if they'll have that much motivation to risk injury and to scupper a move that is probably going to take place anyway this summer. So I think that could be a reason I could be wrong, but I think that could be a factor with Bournemouth not performing, and a reason why they haven't been performing so well this season, as well as Eddie Howe's tactics kind of being stale, and he's been there for a long time, and you know, kind of after a while, it's difficult to maintain being a mid-table club. We've seen it so many times. It's really tough to maintain kind of 12th, 13th place, and they could survive, but I wouldn't be
where did they finish last
surprised
season?
to see them
Did they have a top half finish at some stage?
Let me see.
I think Bournemouth though are paying the price for a poor transfer window in the summer gone. I think they had the chance to invest well, but the signings just haven't come through. It happens, you know. So they're not in good shape.
They finished 14th last year, and no, they've never had a top 10 finish. I was saying this last week that they've never made the top 10.
Stefan, Joe's been very critical on the show of Eddie Howe this season. Obviously with the obvious dip in form from Bournemouth, and up to the season he looked like one of the best up and coming English managers. Do you think for him it's a case of everything's just gone a bit stale at Bournemouth? Do you think he's not been backed properly in the window? Do you think the players have got a bit sick of him?
Yeah, it's probably a combination of a couple of things. I mean, I think you probably would argue now that it's gone quite stale. I mean, for the last couple of seasons, Bournemouth have been, you know, your kind of exciting top bottom half team, if you know what I mean, kind of finishing up towards that kind of between 10th and 14th, playing pretty good football, you know, being involved in a hell of a lot of really good games, but ultimately, you know, lacking a real strong spine, I guess. And you probably have to look at this year and look at, you know, they've kind of been able to see what kind of team they are the last couple of years, and it doesn't seem like Eddie Howe's made enough moves to address that. And now whether that's the club not giving him enough support to do so, or whether that's him maybe thinking that they're going to survive in the same way every time, it's hard to exactly pinpoint, but you would say that I think regardless, probably a mutual parting of the ways at the end of the year could be on the cards. I think there would be a lot of suitors for Eddie Howe, definitely. I know West Ham were always very keen on him.
Would you like him at West Ham?
At the moment, probably not. I think West Ham need a bit of stabilisation before maybe trying to expand out with kind of more attack-minded coach like we've seen the last couple of seasons with a very attack-minded coach in Pellegrini, a lot of conceding of goals. So I think you're kind of going right back to that without maybe fixing the problems that currently exist. So right now, probably not a good fit there. But I think there are plenty of clubs that would take him for sure in the Premiership.
Well, we will get on to West Ham very shortly, and we will let you obviously have a bit of a rant when we get there. Joe, we've been discussing British politics all day. We're on to the great escape, Nigel Pearson at the helm at Watford.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to stay up?
Now, this is really interesting because I think Troy Deeney is just so important for them. And as it stands, Troy Deeney's not going to be playing any part in the remainder of their season. And with Troy Deeney in the side, I would have said Watford are going to stay up quite confidently. You know, he's not really a goal scorer. He does score some goals, but it's just what he brings to the team in terms of his passion, his drive, his leadership, his power. He's a really, really, really top player, even though he doesn't score tons of goals.
I think we really saw that with his absence this season.
He's a selfless striker. Yeah, absolutely. He's a selfless striker, and he works extremely hard. He brings other people into play. And I think that he brings out the best of the likes of Jared Deulofeu, and he's not going to let Deulofeu drift through games. Whereas I think that if Deeney's not on the side, that you would see the likes of Deulofeu drift through games, and he's not going to have the impact that they'd want him to have in terms of contributing high up the pitch over the next 10 games, 9 games even. So I think that without Deeney, Watford, I mean, they've just won 6 games. They're going to have to be pretty good to stay up without Troy Deeney on the side. I'd like to hear what the other lads have.
Deulofeu is another interesting one because I'm not sure if he will be back in. Like he was initially ruled out for the season again, and I'm not sure if he'll be back for the summer season. But without Deulofeu and Deeney is how it looks for Watford. Stefan, do you give them any hope?
I would have said of all the teams then that this break kind of came at the worst time for Watford. I mean, they just battered Liverpool at home. They were kind of picking up a bit of traction, looking a lot better, far more improved. And now they seem to come out, and we don't want to dip back too much into the COVID side, but they seem to be the club that are very kind of quite outspoken against, not going back. We don't want to go back and play.
Themselves in Brighton, yeah.
Troy Deeney saying he's not going to play at all. Pearson has, given numerous interviews where he's been all just kind of harping on about the risk, and they've been criticised online, people like Joey Barton, etc. So there's going to be a big kind of, I think, mental pressure on them coming back in that they've somewhat brought upon themselves. Fairly or unfairly, you can leave that for people to decide for themselves. But I think it's, in terms of kind of coming back in, Watford are probably in the worst shape, I would have said, of a few of the teams, just because of some of those external factors that we're pressing down on them.
Yeah.
They've had an unnamed player get COVID as well, by the way, on the return to training.
Is that just today? Yeah.
Hopefully they'll be back
last week.
playing. Hopefully they'll be back training and playing by the time the season resumes, because there is enough time. And obviously we do wish that there's not a whole number of positive tests in the meantime. Conor, so a bright spark for Watford before the season was curtailed was that Ismaila Sarr finally looked like he was a strike. Oh, we've lost him.
We've lost Conor.
Not an Ismaila Sarr fan.
Well, maybe I'll direct that one to you then, Joe, because you were quite critical of their lack of forward power. Ismaila Sarr looked like he was turning into the player that they thought they had bought initially.
He was fantastic in that game against Liverpool, wasn't he? And I can't remember offhand other games exactly, but I know that he was in good form before the outbreak of the pandemic of COVID. So that kind of feeds into what Stefan was saying about it being the worst possible time for there to be a break in play for Watford, because they've just been seeming to get the best out of Ismaila Sarr. And certainly if that Liverpool performance is anything to go by, he would be a key player for them in this run-in, for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe, Conor, are you with us? Are you back?
I'm indeed. Can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly. Tilt your camera if you don't mind. Excellent. Great to have you back.
There we go.
We said that Ismaila Sarr looked like he was starting to come good for Watford up top, but maybe that's all the more reason why the break came at the wrong time for Watford. They did seem to be finding their feet. They'd obviously been on a fantastic run. How do you see it finishing for them?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think Joe and Stefan both sort of raise pretty valid concerns for Watford's safety at the moment. However, I think despite all of that, I think with Nigel Pearson, they just have, unlike the clubs below them, they have someone in him who will instill enough sort of discipline and defensive solidity to see them through. I think he's able to set them up to get results, even if it's to dig out draws. And I think they'll be tough to beat at home under him. So yeah, I think they have a decent chance. Like they've got a bit of speed to hit teams on the break as well. So they don't have to. Unlike Norwich or Bournemouth, they probably won't attack teams as hard. They'll kind of just sit and wait for them in the meantime. So I think they'll be okay, Rafe, but it won't be easy by any means. And as Joe said, I think they'll miss Deeney quite a lot with his leadership role.
I think it'd be interesting to see if he does make some form of return. Well, down the line, maybe he might train by himself for the next few weeks. I think all he said he's looking for is clarity over some of the questions that he's raised, and knowing the kind of guy that he is, I'd be very surprised if he left his mates to get relegated in his absence because of how much he's shown he loved that football club over the last few years.
I think even if he doesn't return to play, I think he'll be in the background and be in the ear of every player, knowing how just what a shift they have to put in every week. So yeah, I think they have enough character and organisation to get them through.
All right, so we'll move on to possibly the club that have the most to lose, that are hovering around that drop zone. Stefan, you're coming to us live from Upton Park over there. What's the mood like in London?
There's not much of a mood here at Upton Park anymore because I think it's a bunch of houses down at the ground. So. But yeah, I think in terms of West Ham, in terms of how they're shaping up, that break might have come at some more of a good time for them in terms of being able to get some maybe key players back, or guys who look like they might be shaping up to be key players, like Thomas Souček, who came in January and looks quite a good player. Likes of Yarmolenko, was unsure if we'd see him again, to be honest, this season. He's back in the fold now, so I probably no doubt they've got a far more than enough talented squad to stay up, but whether they can stick it together consistently, it's hard to know. You've seen them even in the last 5 games. They threw away a game at Arsenal where they could, God knows how many, clear open chances, managed to lose at 1-0. A game at Liverpool where, Fabianski, arguably their best player of the last couple of seasons, lost in the game there. And then the home debacle at Brighton when they were 2 goals ahead twice and managed to draw that 3-3. So, they've already kind of displayed enough fragility to suggest they can go down, but it would seem that maybe if they've got enough, of their stronger players back in the fold now, that they will just have enough to stay up. But I can't say it's going to be enjoyable viewing.
It was only a couple of weeks before we broke up that we were comparing on this show West Ham to Everton, in 2 teams that were seriously underperforming for the strength of the squad that they had. I think we went through the lineups, the best 11 per se of what the team would look like. And when you put West Ham's team down on paper, you look at that team and think, Jesus, they should be finishing top half of the table, nailed on certainty,
sure.
Challenging for those Europa League spots. But it's just not worked out that way for them.
No, not at all. And, there's, I guess, the things you have to look at. I mean, the signing of even guys like Fornals this season, who came in, and at the start, it took him a while definitely to get settled. He's bit by bit getting his feet under him, but as you're trying to integrate a player like that into the team, you seem to be losing games. Felipe Anderson just, had a terrific opening first half of the season at West Ham, and has gone completely off the boil since. I mean, the last home game where they beat Southampton and they looked really, really good, Felipe Anderson didn't play. He came on in the 88th minute. So Jared Bowen came in.
Do you think
looked a lot more lively?
Do you think that a lot of these West Ham players have been brought in without any sort of cohesion as to how they're going to play together, without any sort of idea as to what that's going to look like on the pitch?
To an extent, I think Pellegrini was definitely trying to sign really attacking players. He had this vision of West Ham being this kind of attacking metronome without really getting the basics in place and getting a good, defensive structure in place. And even a hard-working, I think that's what Moyes said when he came in. Is like, I'm just going to make these guys work hard. And, those players, once they're working hard enough, they're good enough, to kind of put it up to a lot of teams in the league. But, yeah, it seems like they definitely went all out for some some big name signings, and there was pressure from the fans
similar
for
to
sure
United
to do that.
in a way, that they've kind of got this team of superstars that are a bit disjointed, and you look at them and think, wow, they should be really, really achieving much better than they are.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I think that's what you saw. Maybe if you look back, I know the last year in Upton Park when Bilic came in and made a few signings. He signed some great players with Payet, Lanzini. Antonio has proven to be a pretty decent player. But it was a really together team. Like they had players, guys like James Tompkins playing right back. That's it's not he's not a really good right back in any sense of the word. But he had a really together team and there's a really good attitude, and that seems to have kind of been lost since the move. That real kind of cohesion in any of the teams.
Am I right in saying that there's some sort of situation with the payments for their stadium, that they don't own the Olympic Stadium, they rent it, and they don't have a home ground? Like if they were to be relegated, they could really lose a lot, couldn't they?
They have a 99-year lease on the Olympic Stadium, so they wouldn't lose the stadium, but they would be playing, I would imagine, in a not very full, massive stadium every week if they were to go down, and it's already been a kind of unsettling enough move, I think, on the fans without playing in the championship. So it would be fairly disastrous for the club.
And given the turmoil that we've kind of seen on the pitch and off the pitch this year at West Ham, do you back them to stay up? They're level currently with Bournemouth, who, let's not forget, are 18th, and Watford. They appear 16th on the table on goal difference, and they're only 3 goals behind them. What kind of chance do you give them of staying up?
I would back them to stay up I think they just have enough game winners in the squad. And I think from their run of fixtures, I think they play all those teams around them. They have Villa at home. I think they might have Watford at home as well. Obviously, those are going to be huge games. Those are all going to be 6-pointers. But, I would fancy if you bring in those teams around you to your home ground. I know maybe that the advantage of playing at home might be a bit diminished, given, how it's going to be behind closed doors. But you would think that, the talent they have out on that pitch, in terms of how we talk about underperforming, that when all the chips are down, that those guys will be able to turn up and get them probably 4 or 5 wins that they need to get across the line.
All right. Conor, I'm sure you can sympathise with Stefan in a position that he's in. A once great Premier League club struggling down towards the bottom of the table. Obviously, as a Newcastle fan, you've seen what mismanagement can kind of do to these big teams. What kind of chance do you give West Ham?
I think West Ham, because they brought in David Moyes, I think they'll have just enough to stay up. I think they lack a lot of character. I don't think there's they've got Mark Noble, of course, Declan Rice, who can dig in as well, but I don't think they around the team have a strong spine. But I think Moyes will kind of have them organised enough to eke out some draws and maybe a couple of tight wins here and there. But I think overall, you made a good point, Rafe, saying that it's a poorly assembled squad, in my opinion. I mean, you look at sort of the choice of defenders. You've got players like Aaron Cresswell, who can deliver a good ball in, who's not a bad player. But then at the centre, you've got players like Obama, Diop, who just aren't good defenders, I'm afraid. And then, as you said, you've got the quality of Felipe Anderson, but he's a bit of a charmeleon. You don't know what's going to turn up on the day. You can't rely on players like him when you're down there. So, I think they'll have just enough, but they need to have a serious overhaul in the summer.
Did you call him charmeleon or chameleon? I think it was charmeleon.
Pokemon Go!
The Pokemon who never
turned... chameleon.
What?
No, I asked if you called him a chameleon or a charmeleon, like the Pokemon.
I hope it was a chameleon.
I think it may have been a charmeleon.
I heard charmeleon for sure.
But if he can turn into a Charizard, then they'll be in business. So
it's all about the evolution.
If he could turn into a 15 goal a year man, that's all we need.
Joe, very quickly, because we do have 15 teams left. Joe, do you think West Ham will stay up?
Just about. Just to echo what the other lads have said, I really think that they lack any semblance of identity, and I think that right now identity is really crucial in football, and their transfer business has been haphazard at best. I don't see how Aller really fits in when they're buying these quick forward players like Anderson, and then they have this big lumbering striker like
I remember Liverpool brought in Christian Benteke a few years ago under Brendan Rodgers, and it just didn't make sense. It just didn't.
Exactly. It's the same thing. Like, Aller would be really good for Watford.
Yeah.
If you get me, or Newcastle.
Aller's a really. I would just comment, like, from watching most of the games, he is a really talented player, but it is hard to see how he fits. It really is. You know, and I think in this kind of team, like a forward, someone like Chicharito would actually probably be more suited to playing in there.
I was just going to say Chicharito would probably do bits right now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
quick poacher.
Yeah.
All right, lads. Next up, we've got Brighton and Hove Albion, who do sit 2 points clear of West Ham, Watford, and Bournemouth in 15th. The team that's probably been most vocal about not returning to play this year. Conor, quickly, we'll go to you on Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of the draw specialists, aren't they? They've drawn 11 games, I think, and they've conceded 40 goals, which for a club down there at the moment isn't too bad. So, you know, they'll again, I think they'll have enough to just draw enough games to get out of it. But for them, for me, if I were a Brighton fan, the biggest worry is results for other teams picking up, because I don't think they have many wins in them. It's just about keeping it tight at the back and trying to kind of scrape draws and maybe a good home win here and there, because there's really not a whole lot of quality going forward in that team.
No,
I would say, sorry, just to chop in there, in terms of Brighton's home games, their remaining home games are United, City, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Newcastle. So they've got a really tough run. So I think I wouldn't blame them for maybe trying to get the season cancelled, because they're in they've got a definitely tough run of games.
Seem to be pushing forward, don't they? I think they know what's ahead of them, and it's going to be a struggle.
They do, definitely. Now, they are a team that have been heralded as playing slightly better football this year. The quality of their aesthetics have been deemed to go up despite not really having that quality. Joe, do you think that they've got the grind in them to last out the season?
Yeah, my only worry is where their win's going to come from. Like, I can certainly see them drawing a handful of games, but they could be, I think they could be hard pushed to get more than one win, and that could, if they only got 5 more points, which is very, you could really see that happening. I think they'd be in trouble, quite honestly. To put it, like, just to give my honest opinion, I'd give West Ham and Watford a better chance of staying up than Brighton, even though they're a little bit behind them.
Well, Brighton have 29 points now, and what do we normally say you need to stay up in the Premier League? 38.
Something like that, yeah, 38, 37, 38.
They say that, but I think it's...
Yeah, so they're going to need about a point a game, so they will need to win some at some stage, and I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. They go to Everton and Leicester as well in some of their away games. So I haven't seen them all, but I know they've got a couple of tricky ones. They do have Norwich away, which is going to be a pretty massive game, I think, for both clubs. Like, Norwich will definitely have to win that, and Brighton, if they don't, will be in a lot of trouble.
At the same time, though, I sorry in advance, Joe, but I wouldn't rule them out of getting a result against Arsenal and Man United at home. I think, they're definitely capable of getting at least.
Yeah.
Well, lads, we won't get too bogged down on what's happening in the middle of the table. We will obviously talk about all the clubs, but we do want to get through all of this in one show. We've got Southampton next up, and I'm going to go to you, Joe, for Southampton. They've stuck with Ralph Hasenhüttl. They've got themselves up to 14th from what looked like a nailed-on relegation season. They are 5 points clear of Brighton Hove Albion. Surely we're into the teams that are safe now, are we?
It would be a miracle. It would be preposterous for them to go down. They'd have to lose every game. Honestly, they'd have to lose every game. If they win one game and draw one game, I'd be 100% sure that they stay up. Hasenhüttl's done a very good job. It would have been so easy to sack him after that ridiculous 9-0 home loss to Leicester. These games happen from time to time. Teams just lose their heads and can't stop conceding. And
8-2.
They've really sorry.
8-2, I said.
Yeah. We can all think of games where that's happened to our clubs, I'm sure. But no, he's done a really good job, and all credit to them. And Danny Ings has been brilliant for them. If the Euros had gone ahead,
we talked about Callum Wilson.
Spot.
Yeah, I think Danny Ings has probably nailed himself in for that third kind of choice England striker, has he?
For now, yeah, I would say so. It would be brutally unfair for Wilson to be picked ahead of him. So if Southampton safest houses probably finish where they are, might creep ahead in Newcastle. I think they're a better team than Newcastle. Connor might disagree with me. I don't know. Maybe he won't.
Oh, I agree fully with that, Joe. Don't worry.
Does anybody have anything to add on Southampton other than fair play for sticking with Ralph Hasenhüttl? They play great football. They're in a position that looks pretty strong. They really need to make a proper mess of it to end up going down.
I would just add that I think it's one great thing it seems for them, and fingers crossed that he can stay fit. It is just was mentioned there with Danny Ings, like to finally get him firing. They've gone through a bit of a revolving door of strikers. You thought Shane Long was the guy for quite a while. It just hasn't really kind of kicked to the level you need to. Charlie Austin either. So, and the young guys coming through probably just need a bit more time.
Should he stay, Stefan? Should he stay at Southampton?
Ings?
Yeah. I mean, Liverpool bought him for a reason. They saw that potential.
Yeah.
Could he be a top striker?
I would be very cautious as anyone above Southampton to buy him based on his past, his injury record. It's a huge risk. We've seen I think so many kind of half-season guys getting bought and not working out. I would see it as a massive risk to go in for any sort of big money
himself though. Should he look for a bigger move or should he look for another season?
It's hard to say. Like if I were him, I don't know what maybe entitlement he would have right now to a bigger move. Like Southampton's a pretty reasonably.
Could he move to a team like Sheffield United, who are crying out for a hard-working striker?
That's not a step up from.
I don't think that's a good move.
What if they're playing European football next season?
Second season syndrome could bite very hard there, I would say.
Wolves?
That's a step up at the moment.
Potentially,
yeah. But
I don't know. But they have Raul Jimenez. Why would they want him?
Why would they want him? They have Raul Jimenez. They could use an Allaire. Wolves. They could easily use an Allaire.
What about Everton? Could he go to Everton?
I don't see the kind of one for him, the upside of a move like any of these, and two, any of those clubs really being willing to try and prize him away from Southampton. It would probably take a lot because they seem like they finally found their guy, and they won't sell for cheap. And then I don't see enough upside just in a short run that says he can they want to bank on him. So I'd see him staying put.
Conor, do you have anything to add on Southampton Ings situation?
Yeah, I think for Southampton, like they look in a very strong position, as Joe was saying. However, they actually have a very difficult run of games, in my opinion, because they're playing a lot of the teams down there just below them who are fighting for their lives, and they've also got the other teams like Man United to play. So they've got to be really careful, because if they lose one or two, I think they're away to Norwich next, and the results go against them. They're dragged right back in. But otherwise, I think I'd be very surprised if they didn't stay up. And as for Ings, I think he should stay at Southampton, and because I think they're going to be want to build something around him. So
well, perhaps they think they could go on from bigger to. They could move on to bigger and better things in future. They do have a kind of a core of players that they built around now. They've had the manager there for a couple of years. They've been kind of threatening to do bits at stages. Could next season be the season we finally see Southampton push on with a bit of investment?
Well, they should be going for a cup run next season. They shouldn't be worrying about trying to chase the Champions League pack. They should be looking at trying to win the League Cup or FA Cup, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, and those are both routes to Europe as well.
Well, there you go. Exactly. Yeah. So
I think it was well summed up a few years back when West Ham were, I think, in the quarterfinal of the FA Cup and looking at top four under Bilic, and they said, which would you rather, FA Cup or, if you got fourth place in the Champions League, or, and even we got into the Europa League in the end, you're looking back, 5 years later, what would you have rathered if we an FA Cup final winners video to watch, or, some ill-fated European run? I think definitely any team like that should 100% be looking at a cup run.
Yeah, but I think I'd agree with you there. Moving up again, Newcastle United. Conor, obviously we were fortunate enough to get your views on the takeover last week. What I want to ask you this week, though, something that we put out on our Twitter poll yesterday, is who would Newcastle fans like to see managing Newcastle next season if this takeover goes ahead? I know you said Poch on the show last week, and that did seem to be the consensus in the end, but there was a lot of people that would want Rafa Benitez back at the club. Yeah, sorry, that is the question.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, personally, if it was, if I had to choose one of the two, I would probably choose Rafa Benitez. Pochettino would be an absolute dream to have because of the incredible kind of legacy he could build at the club. You look at what he did at Spurs; he's a wonderful manager, and the attacking football he plays is brilliant. However, I think in order to compete as a team, as a club, and to look to win things, I think Benitez is the answer. And I think there's almost an air of unfinished business at Newcastle with him. And I think the lift that the place would get, knowing that we have someone like him who holds the fans and the club so dearly to his heart, I think it would be an incredible moment to have him back at the club.
Is he the right man for the job, though, or is that just sentiment?
Oh, he's the right man for any job, in my opinion. Like I think he's an absolutely brilliant manager. The way he obsessively organizes teams and how he can read the game and change games for you as well. He did incredible work with such a limited group of players. I can only I think he'd have us challenging for the top four, no problem, given just a bit more backing anyway, let alone being the richest club in the world. So I think he's an incredible manager. I'd love to see him back.
I would imagine that, if you do get a big consortium in, that Rafa won't be the appointment. I can't imagine them kind of seeming to go back on what was there before. They'll probably want to build their own kind of stamp, put their own stamp on and their own identity of the club. And that's why I would have said that Pochettino would be probably more likely if it is all to go through.
Joe?
It's a very interesting point, yeah. Go ahead, Joe, sorry.
No, I really don't have too much to add. I couldn't honestly predict who Newcastle's owners who don't even own the club yet might choose to hire. They could go left field and choose someone who's done the business in a major European league, who's out of a job or who they managed to price away. I don't know. There are a lot of highly regarded young German managers at the moment.
Yeah.
It's very trendy to hire younger managers as well.
I think in this case you've got two managers that are established in the Premier League. They've done their time there. They're both available per se. They would both want that job, and the fans would want both of them. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't one of two of them.
Yeah, no, they were both linked with the Arsenal job, and out of the two, I would have preferred Rafa Benitez when those rumours were flying around. Like Conor said, Rafa Benitez has been there and done it many times. He's proven in his tactics and his philosophy, and he never seems to get stale, does Rafa? And I think with a bit more backing, he'd be very, very good for any club around the world.
Does anybody see anything especially interesting happening in the rest of the season for Newcastle?
No.
Absolutely not.
They're on holidays already, are they?
Conor might throw his season ticket in the bin.
Oh no, it's going to be just an effort to see the season out. To be honest, I think it's a squad that doesn't have a whole lot of quality to begin with, and we have again a manager who doesn't offer a whole lot of quality either.
Are you going to say anything nice about Steve Bruce, Conor, considering they're in a better position than they were last year?
Of course, we should be in a better position because he's got a £30 million striker out front that he's done absolutely nothing.
Who scored one goal.
and the return of the prodigal son also.
I don't think that was his signing, though, Conor, was it?
It wasn't. However, it was a £30 million striker that we didn't have access to last season.
All right. Give the man a bit of credit, will you?
Fair play to Bruce for picking things up, because it looked like it was really going to nosedive very quickly.
That was a job that nobody wanted. Nobody in football wanted that poison chalice.
And it could have been a Sunderland. It could have so easily been a Sunderland. Easily.
I mean, in fairness to him, I think we went away to Leicester and got absolutely pummeled because he incredibly decided to switch to a back four from back five in that game, as any sensible man would. And we got smashed, and then he went back to the back five, and we sort of steadied the ship since and got some okay results. So listen, he's basically stuck to Rafa's template. He copy and pasted what Rafa did, and that's what a sensible man would do in his position. So
what you're saying is he's a Geordie legend, is what you're saying.
Rafa is, exactly. I appreciate it. So
I would say he's probably increased his personal stock in terms of, clubs will look at him as someone who can go in and just do a reasonable job for a season, stabilise if you sack your manager in season. I think
definitely
he's probably thrown his hat into that ring.
We'll see him at West Ham in a couple of years, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think 22, 23, I think he's due in.
Brilliant, lads. We'll move on.
When Unai Emery gets sacked.
Oh dear.
We'll move on to Everton then, who sit 12th on the table. Again, another team that presumably are going to be on holidays. Joe, I'll let you start with Everton. They have turned it around this season. They've looked good under Ancelotti. Will they want to finish strong and lay down a marker for next season? They're technically not out of European contention this year. They're only 3 points behind Arsenal. Where do they stand?
Well, the smartest thing that they've done this season is to get rid of the biggest fraud in English football, and Marco Silva. How he managed to get 3 Premier League jobs on the spin with a payoff from each of them is just...
For someone that good looking, Joe, he should be getting some sort of job. So,
well, I think he's had his day in the Premier League, hasn't he? You can't see him coming back. No, Ancelotti was a very smart appointment, and they did really well to get him. That's a big name. That's one of the great managers of our generation of all time.
Arsenal were linked with him, and Everton somehow managed to get the deal for him.
I don't think they stole him from Arsenal. I think Arsenal wanted Mikel Arteta. I don't think there was ever any doubt about that. It took Arsenal a long time to get that deal across because of the complicated managerial transfer to get Manchester City's assistant manager from them. But getting Ancelotti was a huge move. They have a pretty good squad. Richarlison is an excellent striker. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has come on leaps and bounds this year. And in our first podcast in October, we were saying he's a championship striker at best, and he's definitely proved us wrong this season.
Nice call.
Sorry?
I said nice call on Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah, no,
very
nice
championship striker.
Yeah,
I think he had a wing back, Joe, who could play in the championship.
I think we probably did. No, they've got to. I mean, what is Everton's ambition? Obviously, if they brought Ancelotti in, it's to get into the top 4 eventually. Ancelotti won't be here content to finish 10th, 11th, 8th, between 8th and 12th. So that's their long-term ambition. Are they going to do it this year? No. Where will they finish this year? Probably around where they are, maybe a little bit higher.
They are 12th now, bear in mind. They're behind the likes of Crystal Palace, Burnley, then Arsenal, Spurs, Sheffield United.
Yeah. I'd expect.
Couple of things on Everton, just in terms of maybe some of the signings. I think that Ancelotti might try and offload now. In terms of them kicking on, I think you look at guys like Iwobi, Walcott, Moise Keane maybe as well, and maybe he might need a bit more time, but there's definitely a couple of guys there who have come in and are probably symptomatic of why they're kind of battering around mid-table, that they really haven't signed the kind of guys to take you forward. These guys have come in, played a lot of games, been given a chance, and really haven't improved the team greatly. I
was so shocked when they signed both Theo Walcott and Alex Iwobi, who for a couple of seasons each had done nothing for Arsenal. I mean, they spent £20 million on the 28-year-old Theo Walcott, who'd lost his pace, and £40 million on Alex Iwobi, who's just, I mean, it was a headless chicken. It was torture to watch him play for Arsenal for so many years.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to recruitment, doesn't it? And like having a plan and sort of an identity, as you were saying, Joe. What sort of players do you want, and who fits your club and your style of play? And Everton's been lacking that completely.
How many of those would Ancelotti have signed? My guess is none.
My guess is none. I can't remember the name.
He would probably have signed Richarlison. Like Richarlison was bought for £50 million,
for sure. Yeah, good
which
player.
is a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a player that really wasn't that good.
they paid the Marco Silva tax. They had to pay extra money because they didn't pay Watford any compensation. So I think that they paid. I think it was about 10-15 million pounds that they should have paid. That they kind of overpaid as kind of, to keep the relationship okay.
There've been talks of the likes of Barcelona coming in with £100 million bids being rejected for him by Everton. Are they right to hang on to him at all costs?
Yes. Well, £100 million is silly money. They should take that if they were offered it, and I think they were. But if it's something, if up to £70 million, I think that they shouldn't. If they're doubling their money, they have every reason to take it. But he's a seriously good player. He really is. He can play anywhere across the front line, and he can play for any of the...
there, Joe, on that. If you look at what Tottenham got for their bail money, I don't think accepting it at all costs is always the best, except when you get 100 million, because they signed a bunch of duds.
It certainly did. And it was
off the back of that. So so I think when you've got the real deal in your squad, as long as he's happy to stay. The thing is, if Barcelona come in, Real Madrid come in, he wants to go, no doubt. So that'd be their big issue. But
I just think it would have been more interesting to see Everton hang on to Duncan Ferguson and just, see let him create a throwback team of just sort of a long ball 4-4-2.
I would have loved that too.
See if he ran onto the pitch and strangled any of his players.
It would have been fascinating to see, but obviously he's not a big name, and they need their money. Money's worth, don't they? So
is he the assistant manager though? He is still on. He is still on the lookout.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Carlos kept them on because he's a good bloke. But if I was an Everton fan, I'd be absolutely delighted that the games are now behind closed doors, because after that FA Cup defeat to Liverpool, I don't think I could ever watch that team again.
100%.
Because in all honesty, that was the most shambolic, probably one of the worst chapters in Everton's modern history. Like that was just horrific.
It was embarrassing. Yeah.
So I think there's going to have to be like a clear out in the summer for Everton, big time.
Yeah. Right. 11th in the table, Crystal Palace. Lads, we'll start with who's next. Stefan. The fourth biggest team in London. What do you reckon?
No.
Although
maybe you can give them that title this year. But I think
bigger.
Yeah, he's piped down. I think. I mean, one for them again to look at these clubs and how they can push on. Like we talked about Richarlison, Everton. You look at Zaha now at Palace. Like they're obviously safe this year.
Has he been as good for them this season?
No. Probably not as good, but he's still, I would say, definitely their most talented player, and definitely the kind of, the X factor that a team like that needs to kick on if they can build the right kind of squad around him. The talk around him is definitely kind of quieting down. Recently you see the talk of players moving up, kind of like guys like Josh King, Richarlison still. So, but I think in terms of them going forward to be able to build a team around him, is something that we'll definitely be looking at.
Let's be honest here. He's not going to sign a new contract, and he has a year left this summer. He scored 3 in 29 this year. To put that in perspective, he got 10 in 34 last year, 9 in 29 the year before, 7 in 35 the year before. So I think he's down tools a little bit. He was really annoyed that his move to Arsenal never materialised, and the Arsenal went and signed Nicolas Pepe. It's no secret that he's a boyhood Arsenal fan. So I think that he doesn't have too much more to give to Crystal Palace. I think he's definitely he definitely felt he was owed a move last summer. And in all honesty, he was. I know that in theory you should say that you should always honour your contracts, but that's not the world that we live in. And he'd done enough for Crystal Palace to warrant a move away.
Conor, you've talked a lot about managers coming in down the table and doing a job and making teams solid today. Is that what Roy Hodgson's done at Palace? Mm-hmm. How much credit does he deserve for that?
Oh, you honestly took the words out of my mouth. Absolutely spot on, Rafe. I think that, listen, he had so much to do to make up his reputation after the Euros with England 4 years ago. But he's actually done a really good job.
Not to mention his train wreck at Liverpool.
that was actually all right. I thought that was pretty good.
It was enjoyable, yeah.
Just stop.
But no, I think he's found sort of his level in the sense that, you know, it's about kind of helping them survive and then kind of building blocks in place. And he's showed the value of a clean sheet, and how important it is in this league like in any league, to have a good back four and to stay in the game. And now they're 6 points off European qualifications. And, you know, if you're looking at playing Palace away, you're going to know it's going to be a difficult fixture. Selhurst Park is a decent atmosphere, and, you know, they're a good set piece team and can kind of pinch a goal and keep it tight. So he's done really well, and I think they're just a solid unit. So well done to him.
It's such a tough place to go.
But has he done anything revolutionary though? Like, you know what I mean? They're not going to break into anything that's happening above them. I know they were high up in the table for a while, but they're 11th now. Everton are going to overtake them, and they're going to be bottom half again.
There's no need to do anything revolutionary for a club like Crystal Palace. They have a really small, compact ground. They had a group of hard-working, you know, kind of physically imposing players. Just play to their strength. That's your strength there. I mean, absolutely. Why try and, you know, you have a flair player in Wilfried Zaha and another in Andros Townsend. There's just no need to go and do anything. And he's done everything right, to be fair to Roy Hodgson. I thought he was an awful choice as England manager, and he was very, very, very boring. But that has fitted perfectly with what Crystal Palace are. And that's not an offence to them at all. That's to their credit. No, go ahead. Sorry, Conor, that was pretty much everything I had to say.
No, I was just going to say it's a good point. Like, there's no expectation at Palace to play really good football. There's no like major investment in players. They're not playing £40 million for an attacking midfielder who you have to build the team around and therefore become more expansive. Like, in fairness to Hodgson, it's kind of almost old school principles in a way. You know, be good at set pieces. You know, stay tight at the back. A good physical team. So, you know, they can battle teams and make it really difficult. So, and you've got to be like that to stay in the league and to build. You can't, like, it's not everybody should be taking the approach of Unai Emery to have, you know, your centre backs 30 yards apart and trying to, you know, have 20 passes before you score. Like, it's nonsense. So fair play to Hodgson for doing a job. That's football. You can win it anyway. And
if I could come in there, I see a lot of parallels between this Hodgson Palace side and Tony Pulis' Stoke. I mean, just in terms of the setup, the 4-4-2, the traditional British manager, the traditional British approach to football, and the small, compact stadium. I know that Stoke's ground is a bit bigger than Crystal Palace's, but what my worry would be for them is when Hodgson does eventually go, what comes next, and if they try to reinvent the wheel and go for a more continental approach like they did. Maybe they've learned their lesson with Frank de Boer. I mean, he lasted 4 games, so maybe they've kind of thought, okay, we'll stick to what we know best. And I think that whatever happens post Hodgson, they should continue with this, because it's just it plays into their hands to have an intimidating style of play with their with Selhurst Park and the atmosphere that it generates.
Well, I would say just one thing to add at the end is they would have to be pretty cautious, I guess, if we're talking about, you know, they might lose Zaha. If you think about maybe trying to sit still as a club and saying, okay, we're happy here, you very, very quickly are going to find themselves just fighting against relegation again, especially, you know, if, like we're saying, if they do lose the likes of Zaha, you know, Gary Cahill, Sacco there, they might kind of move on. They're tailing off towards the end of their career. So they could very quickly lose the spine of what is a very decent side. And if they don't, while they're in a decent position now, try and start to build and become maybe something more very quickly, you see clubs just get recycled back down to the bottom of the league. So there would be a risk of that that they need to be pretty conscious of.
That's a fair comment, Steph.
Lads, we had every intention of going through all 20 teams today. We've gone through 10 and it's taken us an hour. So we are going to do this in 2 segments, I think is the way we're going to do it. So this is essentially the end of part 1. We will be back later in the week to do part 2. Before we go, I would like to get a prediction of how the bottom 6 is going to shape up for you. We think that Southampton, Newcastle, Everton, Palace are going to be safe from the teams we've talked about today. But I'm going to ask you guys to arrange the bottom 6 in an order that you think it's going to finish. Joe, I think you've got a table there in front of you. How do you see it finishing? Who's going to go down? Who are the 3?
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Okay, since we're having to predict, I'll predict that the bottom three stays the same, and that Brighton will drop down to 17th, Watford 15th, and West Ham will stay 16th. I could be wrong with that spot. That's
okay.
what I'll go for.
Stefan?
This might be one of the bolder, not really bolder, but I'd kind of see it as Norwich, Bournemouth, Brighton might be the three that stay down or that go down.
Okay.
Just on the points we touched about, everyone needs wins on the run in. Brighton don't look like they can get them. And again, they're putting pressure on themselves by kind of speaking out against the league. And Bournemouth, I think we've talked at length about their issues. So they'd be the three for me.
Conor?
Yeah, the difficult one. I think I'd go Norwich last place, Bournemouth 19th, Villa 18th, and then Brighton 17th with Watford 16th and West Ham 15th.
I think that Watford are going to be okay. I know that we've lost they have issues up top, but I think that they've done enough this season and they've been around long enough to beat the drop. I think that West Ham and Brighton are definitely going to get pulled down into it, and I think the Villa are going to stay up. Norwich to go down, Bournemouth to go down, and one of Brighton and West Ham. I just don't know which one. Like I think West Ham is not a great place to be right now, but Brighton's run-in might just keep West Ham up.
Yeah, and keep in mind there's no one in the stand to run onto the pitch and batter the West Ham players.
Well,
Play a bit more freely.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I think Brighton's run-in will keep West Ham up.
Yeah.
All right, well, look, lads, thank you so much for coming on today. I hope that we've all managed to move on from our heated afternoon discussions. Conor, it's been great to have you back on.
It's been great to be back on. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Stefan, thanks for the debut. It's been too long in the making, in the coming.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, lads. Thanks for having me on.
And Joe, I'm sure we'll be stuck with you again in the future, will we?
I'm afraid we will, Rafe.
Conor, you were saying something to Stefan there, were you?
No, I was just saying, I think the sign in the background says tube in 2 minutes, so we better hurry.
Oh, I better run. I've got to get to Stratford.
Joe's got a dinner in 2 minutes sign flashing above his head there. So,
well, I look forward to the amalgamation of the Northern Irish and the Republic of Ireland leagues next week. That should be good.
Oh, God.
Guys, this has been the Premier Football Podcast. Please remember to follow us, to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The content does come out on Spotify as well. There's a bit of an issue with too many amateur podcasters uploading their nonsense at the moment, so it is taking a few days, but it is going up on Spotify as well. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for part